I don't have a gavel. That's okay. Welcome to the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees meeting. If you would stand and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Spicer, if we could have the roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy,
Here.
Mrs. Summers,
Here.
Mr. Mickelson,
Here.
Mr. Batolo,
Here.
Mr. Jackman, Mr. Jackman, Mrs. Thompson, here. Chair Jellicoe,
Present. I'd like to thank Mrs. Spicer for helping us out tonight. Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge Tonette West for her many years of service to this district and to this board. And I'd like to introduce our new executive secretary, I believe the title is. Ms. Kelly Murray, would you please stand? Thank you. So we have 3 board members here tonight and 3 online, so they'll be visiting with you, I'm sure, along the line. So thank you for coming and welcome. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We do have an addendum, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the addendum.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We're on to superintendent's report, human resources update. Mrs. Bolton.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, and members of the board. I am here tonight, well, I'm here at all board meetings, but specifically I'm going to present on our exit survey data that was given for the 21-22 school year. Do I just tell you, Zach, when to? Okay, you can go to the first slide. Thanks. This year, we did have a combination of 54 resignations or retirements within the district. And I did send out reminders of the exit survey 3 different times, and I was able to get 14 responses. So a 26% response rate, which was a little bit higher than the last response rate that we received in 2020. We can go to the next slide. 7 of the 14 responses, the individuals had 10 years or less with the district, and 7 had 15 years experience or more with the district. So exit surveys tend to have standard questions, and the purpose of the exit survey is to give us feedback so that we can take steps to improve for recruitment, employee retention, among other things. So one of the first questions we asked was, when did you decide to resign? And you'll see a number and then a comma in the percentage. The majority had other, and most of them knew they were going to resign either coming into the year or towards the beginning of the year. Many knew that they were ready to retire, so that decision was made. Others said that within the first month or so, the position just really wasn't for them. It wasn't a fit. If they couldn't switch over into a position that worked for them, then they knew that they were going to resign. The rest really came within the 1 to 9 month mark. What are some of the reasons that contributed to your decision? In the lighter red, I guess, is job advancement. So they were promoted somewhere else. One person said that the 4-day week was a reason that they decided to retire. 4 individuals said dissatisfaction, and in the question, it was dissatisfaction / management. So we did ask for, I called and followed up and talked to many of the individuals if there were questions. A lot of them were relocation, family, and personal reasons. So out of the 14 that responded, 4 of them said due to dissatisfaction. On the next question, on these yes and no questions, by the way, they were followed up with asking for details. And so we asked if there was a specific event or issue that promoted or prompted their resignation. And 9 said yes and 5 said no. So when I dug in a little bit deeper, the reasons were someone's husband got a job, so they were having to relocate. 2 others said that they were moving to get closer to family. 1 said that it was workload. There was 2 individuals that said they just didn't feel enough support and didn't feel safe. 1 individual said just they don't want to change for the block schedule and 4-day week. And another one was paperwork and time. When asked if they did discuss this with their supervisor, the majority said yes and the others said no. And when I talked to them or the follow-up to their information, they really did have some suggestions of different things maybe we could look at to help. But the majority of people that that I was able to follow up with and talk to, which in the grand scheme of things is not a majority by any means, they weren't really bitter. If things didn't work out or how they wanted, they really had some helpful information, and we had some really good conversation on some different things we could work on. So some of the feedback was in regards to the paperwork in special education, which in any district, you're not going to get away from that. And so they had some different suggestions and different steps that we could possibly take to look at in how to help maybe assist with some of the time that takes. And Casey and Tiffany were also, they've talked to individuals and they were aware of it and already have some plans in place to look at some different avenues. We asked about the quality of training. And on a 1 meaning poor, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 meaning poor, 5 outstanding, we had 4 individuals score in the 1 to 2. 3s, the comments that went with it were just kind of neutral. And you had 7 people score in the 4 to 5. When we asked about the working relationship with their direct supervisor, again, 1 was poor, 5 was outstanding. You had 3 that marked 1, and in all fairness, 2 of those 3 was dissatisfaction with me, so not their personal principal. And the 3s, they just didn't feel like they had really fully developed a relationship with their supervisor yet, but it wasn't negative. And then we had 8 that scored in the 4 to 5. The working relationship with colleagues, we always ask this question, with PLCs and how things are going. And for the most part, those all scored in the 4 and 5s. We had 1 in the 3. Had some indifferences this year with some of their colleagues. We ask about the salaries with the different positions. And again, most are pretty satisfied with the salary of their current position. When it comes to benefits, it again was on the upper end of the scale. On some of the 3 comments, they said that it's not that our benefits are bad, but they aren't what they used to be. And so those particular, I know some of those particular comments came from people retiring, and they're not wrong, right? I mean, when they started, we had a $0 deductible. I know when I started, it was $200, and just with times, I mean, ours, our benefits, I guess, if you want to say, because of cost, have gone down just like the rest, but we're still kind of on that upper end. But I don't know that there was really any suggestions or feedback for how to improve that. They all said they knew it just was what it was with the times. So, the overall workload of the position, and so people gave really good, comments. But in the end, some of the suggestions were they don't know what to do to improve it. And you'll see that there are, quite a few 1s and 2s, some 3s. So 7 in the 1 and 2, so 50%. But they said it's a lot. Special education commented on the IEP paperwork, but it wasn't just special education. Teachers in general just said the workload, and they don't know what to do to fix it. They do feel that the extra PLC time and the additional time with the 4-day week has helped, but they just said education as a whole. So there wasn't really any suggestions on what we can do to try to make it better, but we hear it loud and clear. Teachers are feeling the pressure and the stress of the workload. And so, continuing to problem solve and try to come up with ways to give teachers the time and the means to be able to meet the demands of their job. Overall satisfaction with the position, again, 1 being poor, 5 being outstanding. We had 6 score in the 1 to 2. Some of them, it was the reason why they decided to retire because they didn't like the schedule or the 4-day week. Some of them, it just was various reasons. And there weren't a ton of solutions that came with that except saying support. And when I dug in, when I talked to people and asked them more, what can we do more? And some of it doesn't come down to the school district. And I think the UW survey actually backed that up a lot. They said a lot of the support and stuff that they are craving is from the community, kids and parents, and the education as a whole just not feeling very supported. They gave some, they said that the teacher assistance program, is helpful, but maybe we could go in a little bit deeper, offering some support past just the first year to help people and guide them, feeling safer maybe to ask more questions, because sometimes it doesn't even have to be a bad thing that you don't always feel safe going to your supervisor when you could have some peers that you could build those relationships with. One of the things in our district is we've had a lot of retirements due to early retirement incentives and different things, and we don't have the experience in our district that we used to have. And so that really poses some challenges too. I've said this before, but like when I started, I had a plethora of experience around me from teachers that could just help at any given whim. And now, we do not have the experience that we used to have. We have some great teachers and great experience, but we don't have the depth that we used to have. So really kind of problem solving around that on some different steps we can take for support. Would you recommend Sweetwater One as a potential employer? It's almost 50-50, and the people that said that they wouldn't, some of them cited that they just didn't feel like there was enough training. One person really went into depth about no training when we went into COVID, so they really didn't know how to teach the kiddos. a few of them just said education as a whole. They wouldn't recommend it to anybody. So it's not just our district. One said they didn't feel valued, and another one said that there's just too much paperwork. Others had some things, but I won't say publicly. Would you reapply with Sweetwater One in the future? That was a 50-50 answer. And we had one, I'm moving, I don't ever plan on returning, so even if there was opportunities, I wouldn't be applying. 3, retiring, and they don't plan on going back to teaching. One actually is coming back that marked no. So 2,
Never say never.
yeah, 2 didn't feel safe, and 1, it was the workload. They said that they wouldn't reapply. All in all, we know that we have had resignations, and we are trying to do what we can to recruit and retain staff. I get calls from the special education directors in Denver and some of these other areas appalled at our starting salary. And I say appalled, they just don't like that we're advertising down there, and the sign-on bonus. But it doesn't seem to really be, from these bigger cities, it doesn't seem to be luring a lot of people in, which tells me our salaries probably aren't high enough despite our best efforts. We have to have something to, if they don't love the area and the recreation and stuff, we have to have something else to try to grab them and incentivize. But the reality is I did talk to more people than what filled out the survey, and there are some that they just don't like the direction of the district, so they're leaving. But a good portion are relocating closer to family, and we're losing them. So despite getting them here, we're not keeping them really past the 3 to 5 year mark. And I don't know how to beat that. I don't blame them either. You know, they're starting to just have families and kids, and they want to get closer to their parents, and you can't compete with that. Nor do I think that I really want to, but you know, we still offer the SPED sign-on bonus with grant funds. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars in recruiting and advertising and calling the colleges and going to job fairs. We've been doing online virtual interviews. We are exhausting our efforts, and we are not alone. The state is looking to pilot a WDE mentor program, and I'm not really sure all the parameters and boundaries to that, but it's basically to bring up your own and try to get more people into teaching. We don't know about the stipends, and they don't know who would pay those stipends at this time, but the district has asked to be a part of that pilot program. The FFLA Academy did change to a public service academy, and they also will be offering opportunities to try to get kids interested in education and future teachers. The board has strategically used the workforce incentive appropriately to try to incentivize people to stay with retention incentives. You know, everyone got the base of $1,000, and then the longer you've been here, you got more money with it. We are putting full-time subs in positions that we can't fill, but we're also going to be putting a full-time sub in every single building. And I know that doesn't solve the issue to everything, but it hopefully will help some to help in covering those classrooms for the teachers, and that's with grant funds. We continue to work with PTSB for exception authorizations and different ways to get certified. They've been really helpful with the PIC permits. Ultimately, that decision comes down to PTSB, so we only can do what we can do, but they have been so helpful in really trying to help us there. And then our teacher assistance program, we continue to change and evolve with that to try to support our teachers. All in all, the exit surveys, and when I talk to people, a lot of them, you know, they're frustrated with just aspects of education, but they don't know the solutions or steps to take to fix it either, because some of it is just our reality, you know, of education, and they hope it gets better after coming out of COVID, but some of them aren't going in, they're leaving education for good. So it's not just our district, like they're not going to stay with education at all for numerous reasons. So, there's some areas that we got some helpful feedback, but they still want time and they feel overworked. And granted, that wasn't all of them, but those are some of the things that we're still trying to maneuver through. And I don't know, we'll continue to problem solve.
Questions for Mrs. Bolton? Mr. Mickelson?
Thank you, Nicole. I think it's really good for us to see this information. And I don't know about everybody else, but in looking at it, I think the only conclusion we can draw is that our salary and benefits are still pretty good. Because that was, people kind of generally agreed to that. For the rest of it, education is continually being asked to solve everything. And when we are not miraculously capable of doing that, then a lot of criticism is directed towards education, and that can feel really personal. So is there a way for the board to support you all in creating a climate in the district where we know we're asking a lot, but we also have your back? And if a parent shows up and is mad because Tommy didn't do his homework for 8 weeks and now he's getting an F, that they know that we're there to say, yeah, and that's what happens, right? Are there things that we can do that are more of those intangible things to make this feel safer because they know that we're there for them?
I mean, I would say yes. I think that is always conversation to be had, and there's always room for growth with that, with the ever-changing society and some of the challenges. Absolutely. Absolutely.
In my testimony last week, before the Joint Education Interim Committee, I wish I could say that these were not unique issues. I testified on behalf of recruiting and retaining, and I also testified on behalf of CTE. And basically, it was brought up just the disrespect that educators are held in right now. In some cases, students, in some cases, parents, the communities. And actually, one senator actually said, what can the state do to maybe remove some of the onerous tasks? The number of standards is overwhelming. No one, I mean, it's just an undertaking that's not feasible. I mean, it's an impossible position to be in and still be able to have relationships with students, which we know is the number one criteria to keep kids in school. So these are not unique issues. Nevertheless, they're the ones that we're dealing with. So I also brought up that we were expanding our fire and law committee to a public service one. Maybe we can nurture some young kids towards education, because that's a field that is just, like I said, the disrespect across the country is just not encouraging people to take on education. Now, I think the superintendent's new initiative, I guess is what I'll call it, regarding trying to, the state superintendent, trying to bring people into the profession with lesser classes. I can see some of the things, but it concerns me because of a lack of education classes that, you can have content, but if you don't know how to work with kids, and in some cases that's a skill that people have a passion for. It's not necessarily a learned skill. It's something that you have, you want to work with kids, and you have that ability to connect with kids. So they're looking at some things, but I'm not sure that we're going to see any answers for next fall. I am happy to see, because I did report to them that we had 69 openings. I just counted them, we're down to 61. So that in a week, so that's an improvement. And I know we will continue to look as the summer goes on. But it's a situation right now that is very, it's going on in every district in the state.
It is.
And in every state. So we've badmouthed education for so many years that it's not a profession right now that's drawing a lot of interest. The number of students in the University of Wyoming program is appallingly low.
Yes.
And they also, the university also gave a presentation on what they're trying to do to kind of bring those numbers along too, trying to interest, but they've canceled programs and stuff like that for the last number of years. And now they're trying to get back on the CTE track, because that seems to be where the pendulum has swung. So it's just something that we're going to have to deal with. I was wondering, you said this is one of the higher percentages that we've had when it comes to responses regarding the exit interview.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think outside the box and what we could do to maybe increase that, because there may be some ideas out there that, there may be some good ideas out there, and I think we're willing to look at a lot of things.
So
And
I
as you
think
said,
one
PTSB has really worked with us
Yes.
in terms of, authorizations and so forth to try to help us relieve some of the pressures that we're experiencing. So thank you very much for your work, and thank you for the report.
So Chair Jellicoe, I can answer a couple of those. One of the plans moving forward with some of the exit surveys is just emailing out and trying to schedule a time if they're not going to fill out. And they don't have to meet with me. I'm not
Mhm.
going to force them to. But a lot of them, I had asked them.
might
I'm
be
like,
helpful.
How come you didn't fill it out? And they're like, because I didn't want to waste my time. Like, I had more important things to do. So sometimes just having that conversation, of which I did have conversations. The other thing with some of the, we have some substitutes that have substitute taught a long time, and they've been filling in for the long-term subs. And we also have some paraprofessionals that are just naturals, and a lot of them have become teachers over the years. There are some people that, through the proper mentoring, and if they don't have all the classes, they could fulfill some of those positions. But I do think that you have to be very selective.
Kind of a grow your own,
Mhm.
with people coming up through the system that they're good with kids.
Yeah.
They have the potential. And I think that is part of the state superintendent's initiative, is to try to locate some of those people and identify some of those people, and what would it take to get them, because obviously they might be in a classroom, but maybe they could be co-teaching or something like that to get some experiences. So I think there's some thinking outside the box a little bit. Of course, we have an election in November, and who knows who the state superintendent could be at that time. So there may be differences there too. So,
Yeah.
so
Was there a question online? I thought I heard it ding.
are there any questions from online?
Madam Chair.
George, Andrea,
Yeah, I have a couple
Mrs. Summers?
questions. Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my questions was, are we going to be sharing with other districts this kind of data, or is there a thought about a process to sharing with other districts? If this is, because it's not nationwide, and if we can share data with other districts, and then are we presenting that to the legislature? Because ultimately they're the ones that, decide on the funding. And a lot of the really kind of negative vibes come from some of our legislators. So are we working together with other districts to look at this problem as a whole in education, or are we kind of still just all our own little islands?
Well, we are part of a coalition too, that has conversations with the governor and some of the other committees and so forth to bring some of these ideas forward too. So Superintendent McGovern, do you have some comments?
Sure. Madam Chair, members of the board and our community. Mrs. Summers, I appreciate your question because that does bring out the other, I believe it's 14 or 15 other districts that are members of the coalition. And that coalition together as a united group advocates not only for our districts, but all the districts within the state to increase retention of educators, administrators, superintendents, all of those classified staff that really make education function on the behalf of kids. And I think one thing Chair Jellicoe had mentioned about the joint education meeting, we also had some other representation from our district, and I would want to extend a thank you for them. So Jennifer Palacios, the principal of Stagecoach, and Jody Gardner, our chief academic officer, and myself also testified up at the Joint Education Committee. And one idea that really resonated from all of our different testimony was about, one, there needs to be an increase in the external cost adjustment or the hedonic wage index, which varies by need from district to district, but the lack of an inflation increase has really devastated our salaries. They need to be much higher than what they are to attract others from surrounding states that have salaries that are comparable to what we have here in Sweetwater One. And what we found through COVID was we learned very loud and clear that family time is precious more than we all knew that. We've always known that, but we experienced it firsthand. So when families can stay home in their state or move closer to family with a comparable salary, when there's extended family to help with support if they have young kids, it's very difficult to beat that. And as Mrs. Bolton said, who would want to beat that? We don't, but it's one advantage that Wyoming has had for several years, and we no longer have that when surrounding states have starting salaries that almost match ours. The second idea that really resonated in a lot of our testimony is the idea of respect. And that message came through from Chair Jellicoe, myself, but it was also very unique from when Jody Gardner and Jennifer Palacios spoke. They are both people that were originally in education outside of our state of Wyoming, and they spoke on behalf of what drew them here and how education in the state of Wyoming was absolutely stellar. It's always been top notch, and it was the place to go. And really about not only saying thank you to your staff, making sure that they have a sense of gratitude that is genuine from those that they work from and with, and also their colleagues and their kids, but also from that bigger picture, from legislators, from parents, our community, to appreciate them and what they do on a day-to-day basis. But we talk about it a lot. We always have great representation to our legislature, and we are always there to advocate for our staff. And it's important for our employees to know that we are doing our very best to try to help them. But their perspective when they spoke about coming from the outside and what a great education system that we've always had and how important it was to continue in the future, I felt really hit the nail on the head for that. Thank you.
Further comments?
I have one more question, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Summers?
My other question comes from, I think collecting data is really important. And so thank you, Mrs. Bolton, for, doing these exit surveys. But I was also wondering, are we collecting data? Are we looking at attitudes and how people feel before they resign? Because once they resign, we've lost them. So, or retire. So are we looking at attitudes, and are we gaining a sense throughout the district of what the attitudes are? Because, it could be, maybe we don't, but it could be that we have people who are just waiting for that opportunity to come along and then they're going to resign, or, they're planning on it, they're gearing up for it. Or maybe that's not the case, but I was wondering if we are gathering data on, the feelings and the attitudes of our teachers, and I guess not just our teachers, because all of our staff is so vital, but are we collecting data on that to help us with our retention efforts? Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that?
Mrs. Bolton?
Okay. So as far as like a formal process from my office, no, I do not send out a survey as a formal process to get the feelings. I guess on some things we might, depending on what's going on. You know, Miss Gardner has sent stuff out of her office as well. I know that our principals at various schools, and to pinpoint each one, I couldn't do that off the top of my head. But I know that Ms. McGovern and I have seen results of surveys that they send out asking for feedback from their staff on what's going good and what they could do better. But that's not necessarily a mandated thing, so it's not consistent across all the schools. But I know that the principals in our meetings and stuff, we've had a lot of conversations about that feedback and steps we can take to improve. But as far as like a formal survey that's like a pre-step, no. And the exit surveys aren't anonymous because I need to be able to talk to people to get feedback and stuff. And so I'm sure they would want that anonymous, and sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. But I can't say that there's a formal process that we collect that data from the district level. If there's certain initiatives and stuff going on, then yes, but I know that quite a few of the schools have done that on their own, kind of as a self-reflection. And they've chose to share it with us. So do you have anything to add, Ms. McGovern? Sure.
Mrs. McGovern?
Chair Jellicoe. Towards the end of school, there was actually a couple of surveys that went out for our district staff. One of those, of course, was the 4-day week survey with an opportunity for people to provide comments for that. The second one was an efficacy survey. One of the things we know about efficacy and research is it's probably one of the highest effect sizes. And so I think that one is very important to let us know how our staff is feeling, if what they're doing really does make a difference. The third was a PLC survey to gauge as to how our teams were functioning. So if people had support from one another and the progress that they were making. And then a needs assessment for what the staff are saying that they need additional training or time and supports with. Some of the buildings in grades 6 through 12 did a climate survey with their students. That was actually a survey that came through. It was free. It was from the Wyoming Department of Education that came through towards the beginning of the year. And then the other survey for this year was a prevention needs assessment that our secondary students took place in. But those were the ones, actually, I think the closest for what you're referring to, Mrs. Summers, might be the efficacy survey, and a survey that would allow an opportunity for comments.
Thank you. Further comments? Hearing none. Thank you, Mrs. Bolton. Communications and correspondence or the public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's right to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies B, DDH, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. We have received no written comments today. Is there any public comment?
Hi, I'm Marty Albert. I have taught first grade at Sage for 13 years. I'm moving to third this year. And as always, my comments are my own. However, I would like you to know that my experience is not unique. So the first thing I want to say is thank you for the summer academies. I have attended some wonderful trainings. I also tell you I've attended 2 where we have been told repeatedly that we have to have a half hour a day for silent reading. And teachers left those demoralized. When? Our day is shorter. When are we supposed to carve out a half hour and teach all our standards too? So that was not so great. Attended a fantastic math training today. Everybody left just buzzing with what they were going to do next year. But I am concerned because the person telling us a half hour is contracted with the district. So if that is a district message, teachers don't know how they can do that. That's the first thing. The second is I have spent the time since school got out really thinking about my last school year. And the need for more social emotional support. We had an angel counselor this year. Cassandra Vincelette, what a talented, huge-hearted woman. And by the end of the school year, she was pulling 20% of my class and recognizing that there were more that needed extra support, and there's just no time. She's one of the many counselors who left the district. The emotional needs of our students now are so high. I've never seen anything like this. I left school more exhausted this year every single day than I have in years. I had 6 students consistently greet me in the hall in tears every morning. That I was trying to teach and get these kids to baseline. They didn't come in a place where they could learn. Then even more kids that would come in and put their heads down on desks. And maybe you don't believe me, but I'm pretty fun. In my classroom, we laugh. We have a good time. It's not, get out your workbook. And still, I had kids with their heads on their desks. I had kids sleeping in class. And try as I might, I could not address all their needs. And these aren't bad kids. These are sweet little 6-year-olds who, for whatever reason, aren't getting what they need. And I feel like there's a limit to what teachers can do with that. If kids are coming in, they play on the playground, they walk in the door, and they start crying. And it's not about school. It's I hurt my elbow and I have a headache and I want to go to the nurse. And, and I keep telling them, you don't have to have anything wrong to get a hug. You can have a hug anytime you want it. Nothing has to be wrong. Day after day after day. And now our counselors left. And I feel for the principals who are having to replace all these talented counselors. But I think we're going to keep losing them because one counselor in a building just isn't enough with what's going on. Now, I know that some of the grant funding I think that's called the wrong thing, but ESSER funding, I don't know all the acronyms, has been dedicated to some of that. I know that some therapy is being brought on board. I don't know everything that's being done. Teachers need more help with this. I'm a teacher and I love my students and I'll do everything I can to support them. But I felt really torn between spend so much time on their emotional needs that it was hard to teach. And it makes me sad and I don't have an answer. I don't like to complain about things without a suggestion. I don't have an answer. But in the trenches, in the classrooms, teachers in every grade level are saying this, that the needs are so high and it's so very hard to teach kids that are not at baseline. So I appreciate you listening. I don't know the answer. I hope somebody smarter than me does. Thank you.
I will tell you that that is not a unique story either. The social emotional skills of our students are not much different than they are across the country. This is an area that is lacking. The isolation that has come forth from the pandemic, some of the economic problems that have occurred in homes and stuff. It's just widespread. And on top of that, one of the things that we brought forward to joint education again is the fact that there's not even funding for elementary school counselors. It's not even in the model. So anything that we do is grant related because the state gives us no money for it. So it's an ongoing problem. We are aware. We have a SAMHSA grant that we will be trying to work through some issues with. That's the purpose of that, is social emotional. And so it's on our radar. But it's one of those things that we don't have many answers either. So we're working through it. So thank you for your testimony. Further public comment. Further public comment. Seeing none, we'll go to the treasurer's report. I've asked Mrs. Thompson to do the treasurer's report tonight. Mrs. Thompson,
I'll do my best.
thank you.
All right, so we need to approve the general fund, school lunch program, and Head Start program for the month of May 2022. For Head Start, let's start with the general fund. The beginning balance was $23,543,295.89. After revenues, interbank transfers, warrants, interbank transfers there as well, our ending cash balance is $25,734,843.62. Moving on to the school lunch program, our beginning balance was $1,366,958.55. After interest, revenue, federal grants, FFBP grant reimbursements, etc., we have an ending balance of $1,126,067.38. Moving on to the Head Start program, the beginning balance was $95,635.54. After deposits and warrants cleared, our total balance was $95,982.98.
Entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Mrs. Thompson, if you would continue with the warrants, please.
Sure, Madam Chair. Under warrants for May 6th through 2022 through June 8th of 2022, we have check number 151691 through number 152594 for a total amount of $8,266,914.66.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the warrants.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second?
Was that Mr. Batolo?
Yes.
Second by Mr. Batolo. Discussion. I will declare a conflict on warrant 152389. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the warrants, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Minutes. 7A, approval of the minutes from the May 9th, 2022 regular board meeting and public hearing. 7B, approval of the minutes from the May 9th, 2022 executive session. Finance. 7C, approval of authorization of the superintendent of schools to sign federal forms. 7D, approval of the disclosure statements, conflict of interest, public investment. 7E, approval to move the regularly scheduled July board meeting to Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. 7F, approval to authorize the annual renewal of licensing for the Alio software package. Personnel, approval of personnel recommendations. Technology. 7H, approval to renew frontline licensing. 7I, approval to renew Brightly, formerly Dude Solutions. 7J, approval to renew Optimizon. 7K, approval to renew Alexandria. 7L, approval to renew Microsoft. 7M, approval to renew Keep It Safe. 7N, approval to renew IXL Learning. Transportation. 7O, approval, post-approval for the total bid amount to Superior Industrial Supply for the mobile column lifts. Curriculum. 7P, approval of the Sage Elementary School school-wide Title I program. Okay, hearing none of them held, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Transportation, item number 8. For board information, school bus routes for the 2022-2023 school year are provided. So to the community out there, please take a look at those bus routes. We will take action in July. We will take action on those bus routes on July 20th. So please take a look at them and how they affect your students. Item number 9, general board business. 9A, approval of policy JGB, detention of students. Notice that that's actually the deletion of that policy, which was moved to policy JFC. And 9B, approval of policy JGC, probation of students, elementary and secondary, which has some changes that were moved to JFC as well. So is there a motion to approve those two policies?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 10, the Lincoln School demolition update. Okay, first of all, I checked with Mr. Salroli. The abatement process has been completed. And so the differences between the district and the contractor have been resolved. The project is now moving forward according to the schedule that has been set up. And that project is being supervised by the state of Wyoming and the district. Mr. Celeroli, do you have anything to add? Thank you. So that's the status of the demolition project. Board self-evaluation, board superintendent relationships. Let me read the items included in this particular rubric. Number one, the board and superintendent work together in a spirit of mutual trust and respect. Number two, the board understands the distinction between the board's role and the function of administration. 3, the board avoids interference with the superintendent's duties. 4, the board solicits input from the superintendent in the development of board policies. 5, the board encourages a spirit of open discussion so that board members and the superintendent are able to address important and sensitive issues. And 6, the board provides regular opportunities for open communication between the board and the superintendent. Would anyone like to start with their assessment?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Thompson?
Okay, so I actually feel that this is probably one of the ones that we really need to work on. I gave us a rating of 2 on number 1, a rating of 2 on number 2, a rating of 2 on number 3, a 4 on 4, 3 on 4, or 5 rather, and then a 4 on 6. Some of my comments were, although I think that the board, or the majority of the board rather, is making strides toward improvement on items 1 through 3, I believe that we are not there yet. Some suggestions I have as ways to improve our communication would be perhaps more board trainings, such as, in particular, defining the role of the separation of duties and lanes between the superintendent and the board. I feel like that would help each board member know their role better. Those are just some of the suggestions I had. I gave us an overall rating of 2.8.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Vitolo?
I gave us a 3 overall, and I thought we're in the process, and I think we can always get better on 1 through 4. But I don't think we've really taken advantage of 5 and 6. I don't think we have very many opportunities to really work together. I mean, certainly we're working together right now, but we're not creating anything. And I think that if we could be involved in a process, kind of like when we go through negotiations, Madam Chair, where we have direct interaction with the superintendent, opinions go both directions. I think we should foster more of that. I think the training is important also, but overall, we gave us a 3 with a 2 on numbers 5 and 6.
Thank you, Mr. Vitolo. Mr. Mickelson?
So 1 and 2, I said 2. 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 4, and then 6. I put as a not applicable, right? Just because of how it's phrased, it didn't make a lot of sense to me that the board provides regular opportunities. To my knowledge, we've never formally provided any opportunity. And
One
I
of
think
those that the language just doesn't fit, does
I
it?
just think it's a badly phrased
Mhm.
statement. And as far as the spirit of mutual trust and respect and understanding the distinction between the board's role and the function of administration, we've had a lot of years and a lot of history, and not all of it speaking outside of Superintendent McGovern's time has been a happy time. And we've made a significant shift in how the board functions by switching to board governance. And so I think we're all of us going through a fairly challenging learning process. And I would also support the need for more training and practice because we just get precious little of that, right? Not just training, but our opportunities to work as a group, board and administration, are naturally limited by statute and just everyone's time. And so I think there's room for growth there, but the really good efforts are being made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reedy or Mrs. Summers?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Summers?
I gave us a score of 3 overall. I agree with what Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Mickelson have said so far. And I think, there is work to be done on these relationships. And then I also agree that number 6 is poorly worded and maybe one of those that we look at reevaluating when we look at these rubrics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy?
Madam Chair, I gave us an overall rating of 3 also. And I agree, number 6 needs to be reworded. And we just need to work on everything as a whole to better that relationship. And it's this whole new board governance thing's been a learning curve for all of us. And so I think we do, with the time we have, I think we do fairly well with trying to do everything according to plan, but sometimes we just fall short.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for my comments, I believe this is an area where the board has made some good progress, but there is still more work to be done. So I agree with the comments previously. I gave it pretty much a solid 3. And that I think that's something that we're all aware of and that we're working towards. And so I think it's just, it takes time to build those relationships and even relationships among the trustees ourselves sometimes are lacking. So I think this is an area, like I said, that I think we've made some progress in, but there's still more work to be done. I will note that the administrative team also gave a score of 3.0. Okay, item number 12. Board information and update on the ARP ESSER Safe Return Plan 6-month review. Superintendent McGovern?
Thank you, Chair Jellicoe. This item is listed on the board agenda solely as an information for the board and for the public. One of the requirements for the American Rescue Plan, the ESSER $3, is to have a review of the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan throughout the life of the grant. So we didn't make any changes since our initial draft of that return plan, and that was approved by the board. We'll keep an eye on the CDC recommendations as we enter into the fall in August. And then if there's any changes that come forward, we would bring those forward for the board to consider. Our numbers for COVID in the last couple of weeks of school, although we're not reporting those anymore, they've been extremely low. So a couple of the weeks they were zeros. I believe one of the weeks there was maybe 2 with 2 quarantines, but they were extremely minimal. So we haven't made any changes to it, but again, we'll keep an eye on it and we'll see what happens for the fall, and any changes we'll bring forward for your review.
Thank you. Item number 13, graduation rates graduation rates, graduation dates for 2023 have been established. So Black Butte High School will graduate their students on Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 7 p.m. Desert School, Wamsutter, will be Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. Rock Springs High School will be Wednesday, May 24th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. And Farson Eden High School will be Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. Let's see, I need to go back to the addendum. Before I forget that. Okay, on the addendum, we have some hires in personnel. That's item number 1. Number 2, technology. Bids were advertised and 3 bids were received by the IT department for the wireless classroom audio systems. The recommendation is to authorize the district's information technology department to approve the bid from Counter Trade Products, Inc. in the amount of $81,813.93 for audio enhancements, and this project is funded through capital projects. Item number 3, facilities. Bids were advertised and 1 bid was received for the Farson Eden Leach Field project. The recommendation is to approve Wiley Construction, Inc. in the amount of $78,988 with a 20% contingency of $15,797.60 for a total of $94,785.60. This project will be funded through major maintenance funds. Item number 4, facilities. Bids were advertised and no bids were received for the Overland and Rock Springs Junior High generator project. In following policy DJC, if the bid process is completed and no responsive bids are received, the district will either rebid or process the contract as a sole source award pursuant to policy file DJE. In the best interest of the district, the price of the Cummins generators were less expensive than other competitors, and rebidding the project would cause further time delays. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve Cummins, Inc. in the amount of $750,600.40 for the Overland and Rock Springs Junior High generator project. The prices for materials were obtained through all of the local supply houses and were selected on availability due to extremely delayed supply chain issues and not necessarily the lowest prices. The Rock Springs Junior High generator is double the size of the Overland generator due to building size. This project will be funded through Capital Projects Fund. I would entertain a motion to approve the addendum. It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Okay, going back to the agenda. Item number 14, board information. Discussion on National School Boards Association, NSBA, and the Wyoming School Boards Association, WSBA. This came about as a result of an issue that made national news last September when the interim executive director of the NSBA sent President Biden a letter asking for assistance from federal law enforcement at local school boards. That the letter was done without the knowledge or approval of the NSBA Board of Directors. And every state association has a member on the board, and ours is a very active member, Janine Bayteski from Jackson. And she was totally unaware of the letter. Apparently it was passed by the officers, but with minimal approval. And so obviously there was much backlash over that letter because that is not how school boards function. There's a belief that NSBA has gotten too political over the last several years. And so this was just the icing on the cake, if you will. The relationship as a district, we belong to the Wyoming School Boards Association. And Wyoming School Boards Association belongs to National School Boards Association. Okay, so as a district, we're not NSBA, but we belong to a state association that is part of NSBA. Some 20 states have dropped, literally dropped their membership with NSBA over this issue and the idea that they have gotten too political over the last number of years. They have started another group, which is COSBA, which is this coalition of state school board associations. Wyoming has taken the position, our membership is up at the end of this month. And so we have taken a position, we had an opportunity to join COSBA at a reduced rate, and our dues with NSBA had been paid up through the end of this month. So the discussion I'd like to have with you, board members, is how you feel about which direction, because as I sit on the board of directors as the representative for Sweetwater One, and so I'd like some feedback in terms of any preferences on how you would like to see Wyoming School Boards Association proceed. There's been some concern, I mean, the school boards, Wyoming School Boards Association is concerned about divisiveness among our districts in the state, because there are some that feel very strongly about NSBA, there's some that feel very positively, and others that feel negatively about NSBA. So the concern is divisiveness for Wyoming School Boards Association. We've had a number of our trustees over the years attend Wyoming School Boards Association conferences in the fall. We've had trainings with Dr. Kessler. He comes. So our ties to Wyoming School Boards Association are important. The trainings that we get as trustees, the trainings that are available to trustees across the state, the ability to network with people across the state, those are all important to us. So what I'm looking for is some feedback, if anybody has any preferences about which direction to go, COSBA, stay with National School Boards Association. National School Boards Association did do a thorough investigation. The interim executive director has been terminated. New leadership, there's a new executive director. He comes out of Kansas and Brian is well acquainted with him. So there's some positive things that are going there, but there are still concerns about some of the officers still being in place that were in place when this happened. So there's some things that are coming up in the end of this month and next month. So I'm open to any feedback that you might have. Anyone?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Batolo?
am I understanding you correctly that if we choose to go to this new organization, we could no longer be a part of Wyoming School Board Association? Is that a deal? Or is it?
Wyoming School Boards Association has joined. Right now, we are one of, I think, about 5 states that belong to both. And so it's going to come down to a decision probably next month about how we're going to proceed, whether we're going to stay with National School Boards Association or whether we would prefer to join COSBA. Now, some of the things that National School Boards Association has provided is they do provide some legal counsel, a lot of the briefs and things like that. I think COSBA is working towards that, but they're not there yet. They are planning, I think, a limited conference for next spring, whereas the National School Boards Association does have a conference that many districts have gone to. We have not taken that opportunity. that answer your question, Mr. Batolo?
Yes, I'm glad. Thank you for the clarification because that makes a big difference. I think that those individuals that are on the board that kind of behaved in an abhorrent way, I think they can be voted out of their position. My gut tells me to stay with the organization that's been around longer, and that's just because they've been there for so long. I mean, I think that experience and that perspective makes a difference.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson?
I'm actually in favor of going with COSPA. Basically just because when we were at the Wyoming School Boards Association conference in the fall, it was a discussion that came up. And the only things that I heard in favor of staying with NSBA was some of the trainings that other board members in different districts are attending. We are not attending those national trainings. So personally for this district, I don't see an advantage to stay with NSBA. I feel like maybe COSPA would actually offer us more trainings. Maybe they could even do something closer than having to travel across the country. I just feel that a line was crossed, and what's to say they're not going to do it again.
Thank you. Mr. Mickelson?
So I can't really, speak to whether joining the COSBA, which I'll forever think of as the Cosby, is advantageous or not, because I don't know anything about it. I do know that I was not happy with NASB for their interim director's actions. And for an organization representing state organizations who represent school districts, that action was antithetical to everything that we do. So I'm in support of not belonging, even peripherally, through the Wyoming Association of School Boards to the National Association. I just don't know if this other organization, I mean, for all I know, next week they're going to publish why we should all be fascist, right? Like, I don't, so I can't say we should belong to another one, but I definitely would support not belonging.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will say NSBA has issued an apology, but we are nonpartisan. We do not even run as partisan trustees. So that's one thing that the school boards across the country, most of them, well, there are some states where they are partisan, but in most states, it's like Wyoming. We're not partisan at all. And so to have partisan politics enter into our schools is just unacceptable. And I think that's the big issue with NSBA, and the fact that that's just not who we are when it comes to what's best for students. That should not follow any party lines. Any other comments? And I appreciate the feedback. So I'll be attending that meeting next month. Any further comments? Thank you for that input. Okay, moving on to the book study. Okay, we started chapters 1 and 2 of Reawakening Learner Principles and Tools to Create School Systems to Achieve Personalized Mastery book. And last month we met Copper and Jean. So any comments that you have regarding the first 2 chapters?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson?
I highlighted so much, but but there's just one thing that really stood out to me, and it was pretty much through both of the chapters and the first section, and it was to be personalized means that children are engaged in a learner-centered process where they are partners in learning with their teachers. They are more responsible and actively engaged in assessing, evaluating, planning, and learning of their own standards. So I thought that was extremely interesting that it's really putting a lot of focus on the student and where they want to be at, what are their goals, and kind of helping them go along with that process through the entire process. They get a say in everything. So it's quite a different approach, puts a lot of, I feel like, more responsibility on the student to help meet their goals.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Batolo?
Like Ms. Thompson, I have several things that I've highlighted. But I think the main comment I want to make is I think this needs to be something we support very closely as a Board of Education, because it is a profound different way of approaching education. I think it's a good change in paradigm, but it is definitely a change in paradigm. So I think that anything we can do to support this change. I know that we've kind of talked about the fact that this is going to start at the high school, but I can't help but think that it's not going to move to other levels. So I think it's going to be real important that we support this.
Thank you. Anyone else? I had two thoughts. I like the idea of the continuous improvement. The plan, do, check, adjust, continuous improvement cycle just makes perfect sense to me. And since we are looking at growth in our students, I think this leads to amber alert. Okay, we're getting an amber alert. So I think that's important that we look at continuous growth. And as I said, we're talking about growth in our students. That's what all the achievement work is about, is growth in our students. And I think we need to emphasize growth in our staff, and we as a board, growth as trying to model growth ourselves. The second thing that I liked was the trust to doubt process. The ability to doubt must be available at every level of the organization. And that does not mean doubt in its negative connotation, but the motives for doubt must be based in a belief that by doubting the system, practice will improve. So it goes along with that continuous improvement idea. So any other comments with regard to these first two chapters? Hearing none, then let me ask what you think. Do you want to go with the next two chapters in section 2, developing moral purpose and readiness for change? We'll do those two chapters for next month.
That's fine with me, Madam Chair.
Does that work? Does that work for everybody? Chapters 3 and 4 then for next month. Okay. Okay, good of the order. Anyone have any good of the order that they'd like to comment?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson?
I just wanted to invite everyone to attend the Reimagining and Innovating in Delivery of Education, also known as RIDE Advisory Group. They're going to be doing 2 listening sessions. They're coming to Rock Springs. We're one of their first stops. They're going to be here on Wednesday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Holiday Inn. And they're going to be here, if you're an early morning bird, on Thursday from 7 to 8:30. You can register on the website at ridewyo.gov. And for those that aren't familiar with this, basically more than 7,000 Wyomingites completed a survey that was sent out earlier this year. They have got all those results together, and basically it's going to try to come and formulate a plan of where we want Wyoming's education future to go. So if you have opinions on where you want Wyoming's education to move forward, you should probably start attending some of those listening sessions. All the information is on that website that I spoke about. You can read the entire survey or you can read the abbreviated portion.
And I will add, this is the governor's committee.
Yep.
Other good of the order? Okay, last month I asked trustees to consider a student voice on the board. I guess I'm interested in what your thoughts are regarding that thought. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes, we definitely.
In a word, huh?
Yeah, that has been a long-term goal. And it probably comes from my professional field. There was a huge movement amongst folks with developmental disabilities that was nothing about us without us.
Mhm.
And that the importance in having the people who are impacted by the decisions involved in the decisions. And I would absolutely love to have a kid, or, I really liked, someone was telling me about the idea of having a kid from each of the 3 high schools rotate through.
Mhm.
And I think that would be just absolutely phenomenal.
I think we could squeeze together a little bit to make room for a student
Yeah.
on the dais,
I do too. I think that would be outstanding.
provided we don't have COVID again.
Right.
But thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm thinking September through May, so those 9 months, and that would give each of the 3 high schools 3 opportunities to provide us with a student. And I think probably a senior would be the requirement, maybe a senior from their student government. Other thoughts? Anyone?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Thompson, and then Mr. Reedy.
I am also in support. However, I have several questions that I would like us to look at before we just jump right into this. I want to try to investigate how many other districts in Wyoming are doing this. What is their process? What does it look like? Have they had any problems with that student being bullied or targeted because of being in that position? I'm all about making sure that whoever's on there feels safe and comfortable at all times. I do not want them to be a target. If they want to target anybody, they can target us and not the student, please. I also want to know how we're going to select the students. Is that something that we're going to determine, or is that by school? Those are just some of the questions that I have right now that I feel like I would like to investigate further.
Okay, my thought is to work with the principals in the selection of those students, and not have all of them like all of Black Butte 3 in a row or something, to rotate it through. So those are some thoughts that I've had, and I'm sure we could visit with the principals of those schools and get some ideas as well. Mr. Mickelson? And then, I'm sorry, Mr. Reedy, and then Mr. Mickelson.
I kind of agree with what Stephanie said. I would hate to see one of the students get, volunteered for this position and then have them face ridicule and things of that nature from their fellow students. But I think it would be a good idea. I mean, they're not going to have a vote on things. Is that correct?
Correct. They would be non-voting members.
Okay, so, but it would be good, because then you would have a student that could take things back and tell the other students, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what it's all about. So I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Mr. Mickelson?
And I'm sorry, I just assumed that in order to do this, that we'd have to put a policy in place that would go through that process to govern all those sort of details.
That would be something to consider.
I was just diving in,
Okay.
but I figured
Yeah.
that that life ring of the
Yeah.
policy would be there to protect me after I.
Well, and I do know that there are other districts in the state that do this. I can do some checking at the meeting next month to find out, their parameters and some things like that, kind of answering the questions that you have, if they've had any difficulty. Now, they may not have as many high schools, for example, as we do, but, so it may be more of a consistent person for them, but I like the input from all three of our high schools, given that opportunity.
Very short terms will be protective.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, they're only going to be there for 3 meetings.
Well, and it might be a different person even,
Yeah.
each of those, depending on what their student government looks like and stuff, it might be a different person.
I think that would reduce the opportunities for that to be targeted because they're just not.
Yeah, not the only one. Yeah. Okay. Other comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Batolo?
I am also for this idea. I think it's a good thing to do. I hesitate to say it can only be people that are on student council. I think we should open it up to any student that's interested. It may well be only student council kids that tend to apply, but I think that whatever that process is, I think we should open that up to a larger group of our population.
And I think that might be working with the principals to find out what the structure actually looks like and how many students they might have available, kind of thing too. So we can do that. And take it. I'll see with the other districts, see if they have a policy on it. Again, what their parameters are and those kinds of things. I'll ask those questions next month. Any other questions or any other comments? Thank you for that input. Okay, any other good of the order? I will just say graduations were wonderful. We actually got really good weather for the outside one. And the wind while we were standing in line, the wind was howling pretty good. But by the time we got ready for graduation, the wind died down. It was a very comfortable evening. It was very nice. So congratulations to all those graduates out there again. And thank you to all the parents and family members that attended. It's always great to see the support that these students have behind them. And those graduations do not occur by those students by themselves. It's the support of their families and friends. So thank you, everyone. Item number 17, new business. Item 17A for board information is policy GCN, Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Performance Evaluation System. I want to make a couple of comments about this particular policy. It's board information. When the public comment went out on this, we got numerous comments. And so I want to share with people that this is not intended to be a gotcha. As I said a little earlier, the expectation of students is growth. And so I think it's reasonable to think that we want growth from our staff, certified administrators, staff, our classified people are encouraged to do professional development as well. As a board, we're trying to improve. So I think this growth model is pursuant to everything that we believe in. And that's the idea that we take a student from where they are to where they need to be. And I think that's the same is true of this evaluation system. It is not a gotcha. It is a drastic change from what we have had in the past. But I think it's going to rely on training, lots of training, and that's training for the certified staff in how the evaluations go. It's going to be training for the administrative staff to make sure that the inter-rater reliability is there. And I'm sure that I believe, Mrs. Bolton, you said that training started on the 1st. There was some training to that effect. So administration is working on that. But what I want to emphasize is this is a work in progress. We may have to tweak this policy. I'm not saying that it's 100% what it's going to be 5 years from now. But I will say that the idea behind it is growth for all. And so I hope people will be receptive to that and take this into consideration as we move forward with this new evaluation system. Item 17B is the vacancy notice as of June 2nd, 2022. No, that was updated to today, wasn't it? Okay, that's a vacancy notice as of June 13th, 2022. 17C is the calendar for the months of June, July, August, and September 2022. And 17D, the May 2022 Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council Monthly Report. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Mickelson. We are adjourned.